So, Natacha, welcome to the Leadermorphosis podcast. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to our talk.
Yeah, me too. Maybe we could start at the beginning of your transformation journey then. I'm curious what kind of prompted you, or what was the inspiration to start exploring new ways of working at Freche Freunde?
It started from a frustration. I was running the company since a long time. We had grown a lot. We were successful. Everything, if you were looking at it from the exterior, there was nothing to change. Everything was working perfectly. But from the interior, I was feeling like we weren't living the values that we had defined. I was feeling like I had created what I was trying to run away from by leaving the corporate world. So I had left my corporate job feeling like I didn't have the freedom to be my best self, have the freedom to decide, have the freedom to develop myself, didn't have the impact that I wanted to have. And I woke up one day and realized, okay, maybe I have that now, but I haven't provided this for everybody else in my team because I'd run ahead and founded and be concerned with producing values for the consumer and being preoccupied in all the other things that in the startup phase is seems more important. I say seems because it obviously isn't, but when you're founding the first time, it feels like it's your go-to market and it's your consumer and it's your logistics and it's all these things. But I definitely hadn't prioritized things. I mean, I didn't even know what corporate culture or company culture was until years until we were like a big team already.
Mm.
So yeah, I mean, I found it also pretty young, and at some point I got frustrated that things were, I felt like I was still carrying a lot of the weight of the company on my shoulders, or us as founders, we were carrying a lot of this weight. All the big problems or decisions were landing on our tables, and it's not what we wanted, but there seemed no way of changing this. And I first started by trying a lot of management fixes, as I call them. So, yeah, putting plasters, I guess, on on the wounds, but it wasn't fundamentally changing anything.
Mm.
So yeah, so this frustration was actually growing because I was trying new things. Let's structure a management team, and let's try new management processes and new meeting processes and all these things, but it wasn't helping. On the contrary, it was creating even more frustration because it was change that wasn't effective.
Mm. And how big was the team at this point when you started to feel this frustration of like, okay, I want to change things somehow?
So we were about 80 people. Let's say we'd grown relatively fast from being a bootstrapped company to suddenly being, yeah, suddenly being. I also structured as a hierarchy because I didn't know better. So we had teams, and it needed a continuous structural change that would be directed by myself because in a system where the system can't change itself, can't restructure itself organically, it was always okay. We need here a new department, or here a new level, or here a new responsibility, and it felt like every time breaking it a little bit to allow it to grow, but it didn't feel natural.
Mm.
So that was also one of the frustrations, not just the operational day-to-day decisions, but also the structural change that a fast-growing company also needs. If if there's not the ability to adapt that organically, well, it needs to come from the top.
Mm. So what did you do then? So you were trying some management fixes and feeling like, okay, no, that didn't work. So what happened next?
So I started. Well, I was basically reading a lot of stuff and talking to a lot of people looking for these fixes, and eventually stumbled on Frédéric Laloux's book. Now talking to a lot of people, this is often where this journey starts, reading Reinventing Organizations. And that for me was really the eye opener. I'm like, okay, I've been thinking about this completely wrong. I've been stuck in this one mindset and thinking we need here these fixes, but actually I need to completely change the way I've been looking at it. And that started the snowball effect of, then I started talking with a lot of people and looking specifically for people that had attempted or really transformed their company to self-organize. I say attempted because I talked to a lot of people that had tried, failed, gone back, or people that were in the middle of this transformation. A lot of people that believed they were doing self-org but weren't. I was also surprised by how many people were saying, yeah, we're doing this, but hadn't actually grasped what that meant. And I was just starting to grasp myself. If I'm being honest, it took me still months, if not years, to really truly understand what this means. Which is part of this transformation, this personal transformation that also happens along the way. And then I think the biggest shift there that happened with me was realizing everything that I value that's important to me is also important to everybody else. And I had been so fixated on creating value to the outside of the company, to creating, it's a purpose-driven company, so to making a change and providing something for our consumers and creating a movement, that I had forgotten to look inside. And I had, if I'm really honest, I had been looking at employees as employees, and not as people. And that was the most fundamental shift that happened. And once that happened, there's actually no, it's like seeing the pink elephant. Then once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah, I'm curious if you could share some more about like when you realized that, how did you shift? Because it's, as you said before, like this personal transformation is so key, but like shifting your mindset, how you relate to people, like that's not like a switch that you flip. So I'm curious how you did that.
It took time. It wasn't from one day to the next. And I often, reflecting back on this, on transforming the company, as my big transformation as well. And it lasted, it was about 2 years until the company had flipped. I mean, I don't say we had arrived to where we wanted to arrive, because it's a continuous process, but where we had mainly switched to a different way, to a different mindset, and that the bulk of people had changed. And I did the same journey as the company. In fact, it made me realize that the company can only go as far as I'm going. So the phases where I was having huge personal development growth phases, then it was clicking more with the company. People were really getting it. And phases where I was stagnating, well, the stagnation was obvious also within the company. So that was a motivation to also push myself more to really challenge myself, even sometimes overstretch myself. And it was a painful process. I always say, growth, you talk about growth pains for a good reason. It was probably 2 of the hardest years I've ever gone through, because I was continuously redefining and re-understanding who am I and what do I want, and having the pain of realizing who I had been, learning to let go of control, truly trust people, being hurt by truly trusting people, and then being disappointing. So all these things that were happening in parallel. It was a tough journey, and at the same time, there were always these beautiful little moments in between, where I would see that somebody's getting it, somebody's completely developed themselves, and they're breaking out of their shell and taking responsibility and flourishing. And these little moments were the ones where, like, okay, this is worth the pain. Yeah, even if it's just for this one person, it's worth the pain. And then I would go back in and and go through another phase of pain, and then another one would pop up. So that's what gave me energy along this journey. But yeah, if I look back at the time when I announced to the company we're gonna completely change the way we've been doing this, I was convinced in the theory, but I was not yet the person that could transform the company. That happened along the way.
I'm curious to hear about how you kind of communicated this vision or this spark of the transformation, because I was with Frederick Laloux a couple of weeks ago in Barcelona, and he was sharing like how much of a difference it makes from where the founder or the CEO talks about this. One way is to talk about like it as a concept, and he was saying, nobody wants to be a concept. So how did you kind of enroll people on embarking on this journey?
So I probably did everything wrong that could have been done wrong. So I was so flashed by this new idea that for me probably it's not too wrong to say the concept of it, yeah, was for me fully understood, but I hadn't quite I didn't know what that meant. Yeah, I didn't know what it would mean. So this is how basically on what we always had our yearly retreats as a company. At our yearly retreat, we, as my co-founder and husband and I, stood in front of the team and said, guys, from now on, everything's going to be different. We're going to be self-organized. These are the reasons. We spend a lot of time explaining the why we thought it any of that, and that's something that I'd always done. As a purpose-driven company, most of the things I've been doing with communication to the team has been about the why, and a lot less about the what. So it was a lot of explaining the why we were doing this, and having no clue about the how or the what. And honestly saying I don't know how we're going to get there. I don't know what the next steps are. I don't know what that's going to mean for a lot of things, but I'm convinced this is what we need, and these are the reasons why. And this sets most people in complete panic because you're telling them everything's going to be different, but I can't tell you how this different looks. And for most people, this is where the alarm bells go off, because it's you're communicating change without having a clear path to where you want to go, or not even a clear picture of how that final destination looks like. So it was, and it was, there were different reactions to this. Yeah, there were some people that were completely panicked. There were some people that got it, but some people that completely got it and were like, yeah, Natacha, about freaking time you woke up to ideas like this. Some people that were like, Natacha, I don't understand how that's gonna be different from what we've been doing. I mean, we didn't have huge hierarchies, and we were a cool team. So that we're saying, hey, I don't understand the subtlety of how this is gonna change. It sounds like when it's gonna be business as usual. There were a lot of different reactions, and that so then we started by creating change agent groups. So asking people, okay, we're going to have to look at how we work, and that means looking at different areas of what we work. So we've defined different things as a group during this retreat. Defined different groups that we wanted to create to work on different areas of what we needed to change. And then they went off the first few months and worked on that. But that didn't work, because they had great ideas, but they still weren't empowered to take decisions. So it was staying very, very philosophical, or very much at the discussion level. So they were saying, hey, we need to look at this, and we need to change this, and that would be great. And that's where it was staying. There was nobody going, okay, this is how it's going to be from now on. We're going to change this. So it was increasing, actually, the frustration, because we still don't know where we're going. We're having great discussions, but we're just going around in circles, and not fundamentally. I mean, we're using a lot of energy to think about it, but not really making any decisions of what's going to be different. So that was also, that was also my failure, thinking, okay, putting people together to decide on things that would magically work, and realizing, no, that's not that easy. It's nice if it would be, but it's not that easy, especially when it's been so long since people have not really been empowered to take important decisions. Yeah, and we had great team of people that had amazing ideas, but they had lost this capability of really taking the decisions, and not just within their company, within their whole careers, or even school. How we're taught in school. This is not something that we're not necessarily taught to. We are taught to think for ourselves if we were taught in the right environment, but we're not necessarily taught to make big decisions that have an impact on other people.
Yeah, I resonate so much with this story of like, okay, so we have these working groups, these change agent groups, and they've got great ideas, but no one's making decisions. They're like kind of not crossing the threshold. And so many people share this experience, I think, of like, okay, so we've changed the structures. I've announced that we're self-organizing. Why aren't people stepping in? Like, what's wrong? And it's just so interesting to me how strong this like internalized hierarchy is, that for, as you say, those people who have not had that decision-making power or that kind of leadership power, there's something very vulnerable in that. Like there's a risk in that. Like, okay, you say I can make a decision, but like, what if I make the wrong decision? What will happen? Or like, yeah. I don't know. I need something more to feel confident in making a decision. You know, there's this gap.
Yeah, there's definitely huge fear, and it's in both directions. So there's a fear to make this decisions from the team, and obviously I still had the fear of letting go some of these decisions, so that wasn't helping either. This was the process of me learning to let go and to really distribute this power, and at the same time people to grab it and really assume this responsibility and dare to take decisions. And so it's a two-way process. Yeah, that's not easy. That's really not easy, because it's filled with, as you say, it's filled with fear, which is very perfectly human feeling, but which very often blocks a lot of the very human ways of being.
Yeah. And my impression of you, like having met you briefly and listened to your story a couple of times, my impression is that you're someone who is extremely competent and driven, and it sounds like, you know, you were doing a lot of things to a high standard in the organization and taking on a lot of responsibility, and when you want to kind of give that away, I think it's hard for people to not still relate to you as that person, or for you to, I think also that there's a way of being that goes with that even if you do distribute decision making, you know, there's that inner transformation that needs to happen for your way of being to kind of match your actions, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean, and I think that's exactly why it's a two-way development, because firstly I had to learn to let that go, and then and that was for me one of the most frustrating times, actually, because I went through a whole phase of having to develop that, to learn to be able to do these things, and then realizing, okay, I've done it, I'm there, more or less, yeah. And then realizing, yeah, but there's still, it's still not being taken, and there I have no control over it. Yeah, all I can do is give that space, give that reassurance, lead by example, and encourage, but I can't. Yeah, I can just open the door. Basically, I can't make people walk through it. Yeah, but that's also learning. Patience is definitely not my greatest strength. Exactly that, to be able to say, okay, I'm learning to let go. And once I've learned to let go, learning to wait, to wait until people grasp what is there. And all I can do is, and there's plenty I can do, obviously. If I then, jump in, I'm going to ruin that whole process. But and I can nudge them, and I can, that was also one of my greatest learning, to realize how different people need different things. So some people just really need to be left alone and given that space. Other people do need to be challenged and pushed and a little bit physically taken out of their comfort zone for it to happen. And not everybody's different, and everybody has a different way of getting there. And some people, you can't. I also realized I can't figure out everybody. So some of them just need to figure out for themselves what do they need to be able to get there.
Yeah, it's like everyone grows at different rates.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think something that didn't help is because I had been, as you said, I mean, I think you've identified me well, because I had been so driven, and so, I mean, for me, it was very important. And I think that comes from childhood. It was so important for me to prove myself, yeah, and to have an impact, and to do a great job, and to be, to be great at what I do. And that and still to this day, to some people, puts a huge pressure on other people, whether I want it or not. So I managed to actually, to recognize that, and to deal with it. But for some people, they still didn't manage to see me as, not the super driven Natacha that has high standards, and that I'm scared of disappointing if I don't reach these standards. And whatever I would do would not, for some people, I never managed to change that. And it's okay. At some point, I also have to accept it, that I can just do my best, and I can't take responsibility for other people. But that was also, that's a continuous learning experience as well.
Yeah, and I can imagine if so much of your identity has been built on, achieving and being really competent and so on, that letting go development must have been painful. Like, who am I if I'm not this? I would imagine might have been kind of confronting.
Definitely. And I managed to trick myself at the beginning, as we are so good at as humans, to trick ourselves. I managed to trick myself, because that was definitely very, as you say, very, very difficult. And then I redefined my success, which I still needed, as, okay, my success is managing to develop and to empower the people in this team. So it was my identity that was linked to the success of the brand, or of the company, or the awards, or whatever, the other things that were out there, and changing that to, okay, I'm a great person. I've succeeded if I've managed to empower the people on my team. So it was reframing my ego, but my ego was still very much present in this. I guess it was my intermediary stage of development. My way of solving that pain.
What was some examples then of moments where you felt that things started to shift, where people did feel empowered and sort of step into their authority?
Yeah, it was hundreds of little moments. I wouldn't say there was one. Actually, there was one great moment as well, but otherwise it was all these, for example, we had somebody that was always really quiet, and she was really amazing at her specific job, but would really be in her corner doing her work. And despite her being an introvert, at some point, her really stepping up and voicing things that were even outside of her area of expertise, but that were bothering her, and that she wanted to change. And then she was like, okay, and this I'd like to change, so I'm going to go and do it, stuff like that, which was like, wow. what's happening? So these little moments, and it was once again our company retreat. 2 years, literally 2 years, pretty much to the day after we had started the whole process, where this was, it's a moment where we bring everybody together. Not everybody's in the office in Berlin. Bring everybody together and don't talk about what we are doing in the business, but work on ourselves and discuss and develop ourselves. And I sat back and I was like, that's it. Like, we are, I don't need to be standing here at the front and preaching how we want to be working, because I can sit back on the back row and listen to people, encourage the ones that are maybe not there yet. So it felt like, yeah, this tipping point had been reached, where it felt for a long time it was me kind of, trying to pull everybody along on this journey, for a while. And then it felt like, okay, it's a whole bunch of people, and it's actually, more people than not carrying that weight and encouraging the few that hadn't made the shift yet to move along with us. So that was for me the, okay, I can I can relax, yeah, and at least mentally, that we'd yeah, that's I think that's probably my high point of pride as well, uh, of what I had achieved, but also what the team, more importantly, what every single person that had done the shift had achieved. And it's also important to say, not everybody, we lost a lot of people along the way, so that quit, that left the company, because it's also for everybody else a difficult process. It's a difficult process, and not everybody wants it. Not everybody says, hey, I'm prepared now to invest in developing myself personally. Some people say, hey, I just want to do my 9 to 5, my job, get my paycheck, and leave me alone. And that's fair enough. But as a result, there are people that we lost along the ways. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like that's quite common. Like around 10-20% of people leave organizations when there's a transformation. And I guess you're changing the social contract that people entered the company with. There are so many different reasons why people might not want to work in this way. Like, it takes a lot, as you said, or it might be the stage of life that they're in, or so I think it's really healthy to have these discussions about that, and not to see that as a bad thing or a failure, but in the best of worlds, we can support those people to make an informed choice about if this is the right place for them or not.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I wasn't far enough in my own development at the beginning to have those, to realize that. Yeah, it felt. I mean, I think it really depends on the people, but I had a few people, for example, leaving the company at the beginning of this transformation, that had been there from the beginning, that I saw as friends as well, not just colleagues, and it broke my heart a little bit, because I was like, this is, I thought we were in this, we've been through so much together, and this is actually the next big shift that the company needs. And it was also that, that I think from both sides, it was a difficult process. But I feel like I'm saying a lot of, like, it was difficult. It was also beautiful. I want to also, not just focus on the difficulty of it. It was also, I'm so thankful for it. Yeah, I wouldn't be the person that I am today without it. So many people in the team are incredibly thankful. Whether they're still in the team today or not, they've, thanks to this process, become different people. They're different in how they work, but also different towards their family, towards their friends, and in society. So it's a shift that is a lot, has ripple effects far greater than how we in this work context interact.
Yeah, I think that's a really beautiful gift of these kind of processes, is whatever happens to the company, those individuals transform and they take that with them wherever they go next. and it changes how they relate to, everyone, as you said, inside of work and outside of work. And I think that's really lovely.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. That's something that that I that I that I carry with me, because the company, especially in the last year or so, has been shifting back to old ways, um, which has been very painful for me to observe. So I left the company 3 years ago. It's been very painful to observe, and at the same time, seeing the things that I cannot shift back, and those are the people, and that's the most important thing in this process. Even though the company might switch because of new owners or new management, the people, they will, it's what I was saying with, once you see something, you can't unsee it. Once you've developed, you can't regress.
Yeah.
Those changes will last forever, and that's how I console myself, and that the company is.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I hear so many stories of companies that go back when there are new owners, and it seems like the collective immune system is so strong that you have to be vigilant almost to keep these ecosystems going in this way. Otherwise, it's so easy for them to slide back.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
I wonder if you could say something about your decision to leave the company then. So you had this beautiful moment of pride of sitting in the back row and watching everyone and seeing that you weren't needed up front anymore. What happened after that, and what led to your decision to leave?
Yeah, it was a combination of things. One part is, through this journey, changed my passion, or changed my purpose, is probably more, is better to say. So I had, obviously the company's purpose was very much my purpose. So it was all about healthy children nutrition, ensuring a healthy future generation through helping children to find healthy fun. This was my purpose for so long, and then through this transformation and seeing what it did with people, how you can actually bring somebody to flourish personally, and to really get out of their box and to become their best self. That became my purpose, and at some point I realized, okay, my work here is done. Like,
Like Mary Poppins.
it sounds very romantic, but to a certain extent, yeah, I felt like, that I've done what needed to be done here, and sticking around doesn't necessarily, then, my impact doesn't grow, because it doesn't need me anymore. That's part of the explanation, and the other part was, and we mentioned it earlier, there were still people seeing me as the CEO, as the founder. This is very difficult in some people to just get that, that status that I had so many years out of their mind. My idea was, okay, I need to leave. I need to leave that gap, because if I stay in the company, it will always be, there will always be Natacha, CEO. So I need to create that space. Actually, I need to create that vacuum so that the company fills it. So I saw it a little bit as the last needed step of really becoming a self-organized company.
Yeah, it reminds me of, I was listening to another founder the other day. I think it might have been Etienne Solbon from Sina in Uganda. And he was sharing a similar realization as a founder, that he had this metaphor of being like a tall tree in a forest. And so long as you're there, the other plants and things in the ecosystem can't grow as much as they could. And it's only when you take away that tall tree that people can grow into those spaces and kind of become, their potential in a way. So he also looked for ways to kind of extract himself, so that people could kind of grow into those spaces.
Yeah, exactly. And it feels harsh. So it felt like, okay, I don't want my team to feel like I'm leaving them alone or I'm abandoning them, but at the same time, I see very much a lot of parallels between being a mother and a company going through also similar processes as our children go, from being the very early stages where it needs a lot more of attention, and then really empowering through the puberty and giving a lot of all the freedoms and getting to develop. And then at some point, yeah, for me, leaving the company was a little bit almost this emancipation of how kids leave the nest. It was a little bit, yeah. So it doesn't mean I'm out of this world, and I still have a lot of conversations with team members, but I'm no longer, yeah, they're no longer living at home. Yeah, I'm no longer the one that's gonna wash the clothes if we carry on with a parallel, um, or mop up when an accident happens. And it's actually super. It was very, very nice when I announced that I was leaving. One person that's been on the team for a long time came up to me and she said, "But Natacha, who will I go to when I have a question?" And I said to her, "When's the last time you came up to me with a question?" And she was like, "Okay, you're right." She couldn't think of the last time she asked me something. It was just the psychological safety of, yeah, but you're there and I could if I wanted to. But she hadn't. She'd been doing her thing amazingly for years already. So that was, for me, was also a beautiful moment of and very symbolic to also what I was trying
Yes.
to do. That you don't need that security net that maybe a founder or CEO or mother in the family constellation offers. You're ready to really. You have been anyway doing your own thing. Yeah, you have been empowered. You've been doing an amazing job, and you don't need that anymore. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. How did you approach like succession then? Did were you involved in the process of hiring a replacement CEO, or what happened after you left?
No, so over the years, I had anyway been redistributing the responsibilities that I was carrying. Yeah, by the end, I still had some roles. Yeah, we were role based. We were using a lot of the Holacracy tools. So we were role based, and I still had some roles. The last thing I did was basically redistribute, and not to one person, redistribute some of the roles. So obviously, in German law, we do need a CEO, because you need on paper somebody that's yeah, responsible on paper for the company. Unfortunately, also it is the fact that most people outside our company didn't understand what that means. So you also need it for for customers and things like that. So yeah, this was just a further role that I gave. Yeah, you are on paper CEO, and here you're responsible for defining and revising our values, and you're responsible. Yeah, whatever I still had been holding on to, which wasn't even that much. So nobody new came in. It was the same. It was the same team. Just a few extra roles were distributed.
Yeah, that's nice. So, what are you up to now?
So after leaving the company, I told you I was very much passionate about people development, about also about self-organized teams. So I worked a lot with CEOs, with companies to develop them or to support them in this process. But I also realized in this journey that, and I did also a lot of other things. I looked into education, which is also something that I'm super passionate about. I often say we wouldn't have to do this in companies if our school system was different. Yeah, people would come out of school, fully confident and ready to take responsibility and wanting to do bring their passion into their work. This is, I think this is one of the most important places that we can create a shift, but also realizing, okay, it's not my world. So I tried a lot of different things along along the lines of how do we create this shift in people. And it's brought me to where I am today. And today I'm, there's still a couple of companies that I'm supporting, but my next big projects I've just actually founded a few weeks ago is to create a physical space, because I think that a lot of the issues that we have, whether it's in our companies or whether it's just in our in our people in general, is the lack of connection, is loneliness, is the lack of belonging. We don't truly connect as humans, and that's why in companies it's easy to treat your employees as just a resource because you're not seeing them as a person. But it's also the same thing in our personal relationships, in our society. So we are creating a place where we want to help people truly connect on a human level. So that's the overarching goal, and doing this through different things. One is a space where people can just come and have a good time and meet other people. So we'll have a cafe and a restaurant and a bar. We'll have a lot of events as well, because through events we can really curate that people interact, and people with similar interests rather than similar society bubbles, with the hope that we can also create cross connection across different bubbles or sub communities. And we're also going to have a co-working community, because this loneliness has become increased by the shift to home office. So I think it's been a very meaningful shift. It's been a good thing, giving individuals the possibility of working from home. At the same time, we are not made to just interact with our laptops the whole day. And we see that there are a lot of co-workings where people are looking for being surrounded by people, and this is what a lot of co-workings offer. But being surrounded by people is not enough. We need to really come in contact with other people, and this is what we want to offer, and not just a place where you can sit and you see other people wandering around, but where you are seen, where you are heard, where you have deeper talks at the coffee machine, where you are part of something greater than yourself. So yeah, it's a physical space that we're creating in Berlin, and it's going to be a space for experimenting as well. So where everybody's welcome, and we'll try different things and see what works, what truly brings people together, what doesn't, because it just doesn't. So it's going to be a fun process, and that's maybe something also that I think is worth sharing, because it's this last couple of years has been for me a process of discovering what do I want to do, and I've focused a lot on where can I have the greatest impact. So that's why looking at things like schools and within companies, because I can do that. And through this process, realizing that it needs to fit also what I love, where I have my fun, how I am as a person, that just what has an impact and what is needed in society is not enough. It needs to fit my passion as well as my purpose. So that's been a learning from this last year, that that's impacted also this decision.
Yeah. Wow, that sounds wonderful. I can't wait to come visit.
Yes.
And as a founder again, I'm curious, like, are you, what have you learned from your experience at Freche Freunde? And I guess it's very different, transforming a company to starting something from scratch. But how are you operating this time as a founder? I'm curious.
So it is very different. I feel like I'm a first-time founder in the sense of, yeah, obviously it's a different industry as well, but also starting from self-org and not transforming later on, and discovering this process. Yeah, how much do I actually need to hold myself at the beginning, because the vision still needs to be developed. I like the source theory a lot, and we talked about it as well in the summit in Barcelona. So I'm discovering right now how much needs to come from the source, be defined there. Still needs to be, yeah, the space that we are creating needing to be defined, and at the same time, starting with self-org, meaning distributing responsibility from day one. So it's a learning phase. Yeah, it was very different in Freche Freunde because, the fundamentals, the what is our purpose, and what are, certain things were just given, yeah, from the early days. That helped actually. I learned along the journey that you do need these guardrails to be defined in order to be within these guardrails to be able to give the whole freedom possible. I often compare it to something like a game or a sport. Yeah, if the rules are not clear, then I don't know, football, for example, if the rules are not clear, you just have 22 people running around like headless chickens, so they don't know, where where they need to be shooting a goal, or where from, or that the ball's out, and it's not necessarily then fun. If that's not been defined, or it's not clear, and it's confusing. So it's interesting now to see, okay, what are these guardrails? What are these rules that are needed? To what extent do they need to come from the source, or can still emerge during this process? So that's a learning. I'm in the middle of it, so I can't tell you everything that I've learned yet.
Yeah.
But I'm experimenting with it, and it's very interesting to see. At the beginning, I was thinking, okay, yeah, we'll define a lot together as team, and now realizing that doesn't necessarily for certain things work. Certain things do need to come very much. The vision, for example, needs to come very much from the source, so that it's not a potpourri of too many random things that don't really have a strong identity.
Yeah, that's a good metaphor. Yeah, I found it very helpful as a lens source for why so many creative initiatives like lose momentum. Like so many, I don't know if you were ever part of like teal communities, or like communities coming together around self-management, and it can get very frustrating when it's not clear, like, what is this, what's in, what's out, and it can feel hard to know what my role is in something. So it's, for me, very clarifying. I imagine it must be really helpful having that from the very beginning, having that awareness.
Yeah, but as I said, it's been a learning process, realizing that it needs that not everything can emerge. And where is that line?
Yes.
To what extent where to does it need to be defined, and where do we start saying, okay, this is a good enough guardrail, and from here everything can emerge. And that's still in defining, to what extent do we want to define. So that's an experiment at the moment.
Yeah.
And I find it super interesting also to work. We're going to have a restaurant, and gastronomy is not known to be self-organized. Yeah,
No,
very
it's a
often the
pretty tricky
parallels.
sector.
It's an interesting sector, and the parallels are very. I hear a lot of people talking almost army talk. Yeah, so it's orders, and that I find super exciting, because I think there's a huge potential. Because so far, and I'm telling you, this is still very early days, but I see in gastronomy there is so much passion. Yeah, there's so much more so than in so many other jobs out there. I mean, nobody becomes a cook if they're not passionate about it, because it's a difficult job. And it's, for me, passion is the first ingredient of being able to be self-organized. I see so much potential, and at the same time, this is not how this industry has worked for many years. So it's going to be super interesting, seeing how do we bring self-org in the kitchen. Yeah, yeah,
It's going to be so interesting. A juicy experiment.
yeah, literally.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, then that's why I'm loving it. It's I feel like I'm learning so much at the moment again, just not just because it's founding in a new industry, but because, yeah, starting with self-org and uh, starting differently as well. So with a budget rather than bootstraps, how to deal with that. Yeah, it's super. It's intense time at the moment, and it's, yeah, once again back on the learning journey, which is always exciting. I get excited with.
Yeah, yeah. So I I wonder then what advice do you give nowadays to founders or CEOs that you're supporting, or to any listening right now who are trying to create a more self-organized organization? What would your advice be?
Often, I mean, I think also something that we haven't talked about that I learned along the journey was self-organized has two big parts to it. One is the structural process part, and the other part is the mindset. I After the initial chaos of change agent groups and let's define together, we started defining a lot of processes and structures that we needed. A lot of it based on Holacracy, which is probably the most structural self-org model. And it was great because we had, something that you can feel and touch and define and put on paper, and we had meeting structures, and we had role descriptions, and we had all these things. But for me, structure is really, it's the tip of the iceberg. Yeah, it's what you can see, but it's not what, yeah, it's that 20% sticking up at the top, but it's not what creates the fundamental shift. And this is what I've seen a lot with people that attempt self-organize. They say, yeah, but look, we're doing now all our meetings differently, and look at our plan. We don't have a hierarchy. We don't have, yeah, we're structured in circles or in clusters or whatever. So they'll say things like that, but that's not what it's all about. Yeah, that helps. That's something that definitely helps, and especially at the beginning, to have something to hold on to, because it's something, you can define. But the fundamental shift happens on a deeper level, happens on a mindset level. That's hard for a lot of people to grasp. What does that really mean? Yeah, what do you define mindset for me, please? Yeah, define for me a self-org mindset. It's very difficult, and therefore it's often not understood. But for me, that's what it's all about. Yeah, until you don't have the mindset, you are not self-organized. Even if you are not no longer calling yourself CEO, or no longer deciding on certain things, it only happens at the time where you see everybody else in the room as valuable as yourself. It only happens when you see the true potential in everybody in the team. It only happens when you truly trust yourself, others, and to a certain extent, the way things will develop. So trust in the future, something that, by the way, we're losing a lot in our society at the moment. Yeah, so I think that would be the most important thing. And it's interesting because I do hear some people that also are the other way, that say, okay, well, we do pure mindset, but we have no structure. And that can also bring challenges to a team. So I like, I'm a numbers person. So for me, if I'd say, 80% mindset, 20% structure, probably both are necessary, but not considering one of the two is often difficult.
Yeah, I think I would agree with you on those percentages.
Even though you can't put percentages and none of this is linear, and in my head I try and I need to, for my simplicity, and I'm a person that needs to like model things and explain things to myself. That's probably my one of the ways I am. So I try and pack percentages or pictures to things to try and simplify very complex things. But fundamentally, it's not simple, and that's why this transformation is so complex. If we could say to CEOs or to teams attempting this transformation, look, read this book and you'll be there, or follow these 10 steps and you'll be there, it would be easy. But that's it's about fundamentally shifting how you see the world, how you see yourself, how you see others. And that's difficult. We need to understand already how we're even thinking, what most people don't even realize. What are their biases? What are their mistrusts? What are the things that are happening in their mind? That's usually the first step. That most people aren't even realizing what's happening in their human interactions. Yeah. So yeah, for me, one thing that's been very, very valuable in this journey has been it's been meditation. So I know everybody has kind of different ways of getting access to I guess self-awareness or self-reflection. And for me, one of my most valuable tools for that has been meditation, and specifically Vipassana retreats. I mean, it's been a way of truly discovering what's happening, who am I, and what's happening in my mind all the time that I'm not even aware of.
Thank you. Is there anything else that we haven't covered that you would like to share with listeners that you would be sad you didn't get to say?
I think I've said a lot of things. I think it's maybe one last thing. I think it's important to not be dogmatic in this process. That it's I think that's one of the things that's maybe difficult in the self-org world, in the sense that there are so many paths you can take and so many models and so many schools of thoughts, if you will. And I think each company needs to find their way that fits for them. So for us at Freche Freunde, for example, it was a holacracy structure, and as the structural part, and then really working intensely on our mindsets and developing ourselves there. But it could be anything. It could really be anything, as long as we move in this direction of seeing each other as humans, coming and showing up as humans, understanding ourselves and others better. I think that's the fundamental part, and it's not about are you following this school of thought or not. I think that's maybe puts too much complexity and too much lack of clarity, or maybe even competition within the different ways of being, and that's putting noise where it's actually not helpful. So I think fundamentally just changing those mindsets, and then how you actually get there, what you follow, how you implement it, how you structure yourself. I mean, you can be self-organized and still have a hierarchy if your mindset is right. Yeah. So I think that's something I've learned along the way, and I think it's important to say, because some people are not ready to get rid of titles, or to get rid of some legal structures don't even allow these things anyway. So I think that's an important thing to say, at least for people that might be listening, that are just starting on their journey, and it sounds too radical to what we did was very, very radical. We went from I'd say a completely normal company to completely self-organized. But there's a lot of shades of gray, and they're all okay as long as you're making these steps towards making organizations more human.
Yes, well said. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that's a good place to stop. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your insights. I really appreciate your honesty, and I'm very excited for your next adventure.
Thank you so much, Lisa. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.